On the bustling streets of Las Vegas, ruthless armed gangsters roamed freely, targeting unsuspecting victims and making off a substantial amount of cash. Their criminal trail leads investigators from the neon-lit clubs of the city to its quiet suburban neighborhoods. Eventually, law enforcement manages to corner the perpetrators. But what follows is an audacious prison escape that sets the stage for a violent showdown, one so intense that even the fugitive's own family isn't spared. One fateful night, a group of masked criminals executed a daring robbery at a money depot, walking away with over $1 million in cash. It was one of the largest heists in Las Vegas history. I'm Jim Carlstrom, former head of the FBI office in New York. A voice narrates. The perpetrators operated with a level of precision that suggested extensive planning. The FBI and local police were determined to track them down, especially after the heist turned into a murder case. Las Vegas, a city built on the dreams of gamblers, also attracts those willing to take risks outside the law. On the night of December 21st, 1998, a married couple and a husband's 18-year-old sister were preparing for their usual night shift. The family ran a cleaning service, a routine job they had done countless times before. But on this particular evening, their world was about to be turned upside down. Out of nowhere, two masked men wielding firearms ambushed them and forced them into their own van. "Move. Get in there now," one of the assailants barked. A routine work shift suddenly transformed into a nightmare. The attackers pulled sacks over their heads, muffling their screams. "Shut up and don't move," another man hissed, as the hostages heard the criminals communicating over a radio. "Car 2, what's your position?" It quickly became clear that these men were well acquainted with the cleaning crew's schedule. By 11 p.m., they would usually begin work inside the Bank of America facility, a location housing cash reserves for 1,200 ATMs. The criminals drove around for a while before parking in the exact spot where the cleaning crew typically left their vehicle. "All right, move it. Get out," one of them commanded. Inside the facility, millions of dollars in cash awaited processing each night. The criminals handed a bag to one of the captives. "Take this," one of them ordered. They forced the cleaning staff to swipe their access cards and input their security codes. With that, the bank's alarm system was disarmed. "Get in there, sit down, and face the wall." After securing the facility, the criminals released a married couple, ordering them to continue cleaning, as if nothing was wrong. But to ensure obedience, they kept the teenager as a hostage. "She dies if you try anything, understand? You hear me? Dead." Just before midnight, an armored cash transport truck pulled into the lot to collect the night's cash deposits. According to security protocols, the transport crew was required to contact the bank security service before entering. The lot is clear. Just the cleaning crew inside. A guard confirmed over the radio. The only vehicle visible was a cleaning van, and everything inside seemed normal. What no one knew was that the two cleaners were too terrified to alert anyone. They feared that one wrong move would cost the teenager her life. The security guards proceeded as usual, opening the safe containing $188,000 in neatly wrapped cash bundles. But just as they prepared to load the money into the transport truck, chaos erupted. Down on the ground, hands up, the masked criminals sprang into action, attempting to disarm the security guards. "You too, old man. Stay down." Suddenly, a shot rang out. "What the hell are you doing? Let's go." The bullet ricocheted off the floor, striking one of the guards in the chest. "You've been hit. Stay with me, man," his partner shouted, immediately calling for an ambulance. "Officer down. We need medical assistance now." FBI Special Agent Henry Schlamp arrived at the scene moments later, taking charge of the investigation. The crime scene was tense. Everyone involved was visibly shaken. It took time before the witnesses could even begin to recount what had happened. The FBI had little to work with. The robbers had worn masks, leaving only vague descriptions behind. We were looking for two men, possibly white, black, or Hispanic. Height somewhere between 5 feet 10 inches and 6 feet 3 inches. Roughly 200 pounds. That's all we had to go on, Schlamp recalled. Despite the lack of specific leads, investigators picked up on one crucial detail. The cleaning crew reported that the robbers seemed startled by the number of security cameras inside the bank. This suggested they had never been inside before, eliminating the possibility of an inside job. Shortly after, a delivery truck driver stepped forward, claiming he had seen two men leaving the bank in a hurry. They ran out of the building, threw some bags into a white Chevy pickup, and sped off in that direction. The driver explained. With this new lead, authorities launched a citywide search for the getaway vehicle. All units, be on the lookout for a white Chevy S10. The alert went out. It didn't take long before they found it. Abandoned just 4 blocks from the crime scene in a residential neighborhood. Investigators ran the license plate and were met with an ironic twist. The truck wasn't just any stolen vehicle. It was an official police service truck, reported missing from the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department just a week earlier. As officers canvassed the area, a neighbor recalled seeing another suspicious vehicle parked in the same spot earlier that evening. It was a white GMC pickup, had those dual rear wheels, she said. The FBI now had a new target, the second vehicle used in the getaway. A few hours later, news came in that the injured security guard had survived surgery and was in stable condition. Meanwhile, the Bank of America confirmed the exact amount stolen, $1.088 million, securing this heist place in history as one of the city's largest ever. Despite no evidence pointing to an inside job, the FBI continued questioning bank employees and armored truck drivers, even administering polygraph tests. If anything comes to mind, let us know, agents told the employees. Though no insider involvement was found, one thing became clear. The robbers had extensive knowledge of the bank's security measures. They must have studied the armored truck's routine and monitored the guard beforehand. Running out of leads, the FBI and bank executives decided to take a different approach, offering a hefty reward for any solid tips leading to the capture of the robbers. I recommended setting the reward at $100,000, Agent Schlamp said. It's a lot for a bank robbery case, but we needed to generate public interest. Authorities reached out to local businesses, police departments, and even airports, warning them to be on the lookout for anyone trying to move large sums of cash. A week after the heist, the FBI received a curious call from airport security. Someone called, asking if carrying large amount of cash would trigger the metal detectors. The officer on the line reported. Immediately, agents traced the phone number to an address in a quiet suburb of Las Vegas. They set up surveillance, watching as people went in and out of the house throughout the day. We had to figure out what was going on in there, one agent recalled. After hours of watching, they decided to knock on the door and ask questions. Good evening. I'm Detective Davis from the Las Vegas Police Department, and this is Agent Schlamp from the FBI. But instead of finding criminals inside, they discovered a piano teacher. She'd been planning a trip to Utah and simply wanted to carry $3,000 in cash. The promising lead had turned into another dead end. But that same night, a woman walked into the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. She had seen the reward poster, and she had information to share. I know something about that bank robbery, she said. She had connections to a stripper named Jennifer, someone who had recently been spending a suspicious amount of cash. She's been throwing money around like crazy, the woman explained. With a new lead in hand, the FBI's pursuit of the robbers took an unexpected turn. With a fresh lead in hand, the FBI shifted its focus to Jennifer, a stripper known for her extravagant spending. The informant, a friend of hers, provided a crucial detail. Jennifer had suddenly started flaunting wads of cash, far beyond what she should have been earning. She's spending money like it's nothing, the informant revealed. I don't know where she got it, but it's way more than what she makes at the club. The FBI traced Jennifer's phone number to a rented mobile home on the outskirts of Las Vegas. Without wasting time, they set up surveillance, keeping a close watch on any activity around the property. It didn't take long for their patience to pay off. A white GMC pickup, matching the description of the second getaway vehicle, pulled up to the trailer. That's our truck, an agent said. Running the license plate, they discovered it was registered to a man named Timothy Blackburn. Moments later, the driver entered the trailer, only to emerge a few minutes later. The surveillance team immediately alerted Special Agent Henry Schlamp. That was enough to get us a search warrant, Schlampf later explained. Shortly after, a SWAT team moved in, surrounding the trailer. Given a high probability of the suspects being armed, they proceeded with extreme caution. We had to assume they were dangerous, an officer recalled. We knocked first, but when no one answered, we forced entry. Inside, they found a man named Riley Bates. "I'm just visiting my girlfriend," he claimed, but the FBI wasn't convinced. While one team secured Riley, another set out to find Jennifer at the strip club where she worked. "FBI, we need to ask you a few questions," an agent told her as she stepped off stage. "What is this about?" she asked, trying to act surprised. "We've noticed you've been spending a lot of cash lately," the agent said. "A lot more than you make dancing." Jennifer insisted that she had saved up the money over the last 4 years. "I worked for every cent of it," she said defensively. "I don't know anything about a bank robbery." Meanwhile, back at the trailer, the agents were searching for evidence. In one of the bedrooms, they found a brand new steel safe with a combination lock. "What's the code?" an agent asked Riley. "I have no idea," he responded. "It's not mine. It belongs to Jennifer." They decided to verify that claim. An agent at the strip club called Jennifer and asked, "What's the code to the safe?" "That's not my safe," she quickly replied. "It belongs to Riley." The conflicting statements raised immediate suspicion. When confronted with Jennifer's response, Riley hesitated before finally giving up the combination. As soon as the safe door swung open, the agents discovered $50,000 in cash and several bags of marijuana. "All right, where's the rest of the money?" one agent asked. Riley shook his head. "I don't know what you're talking about," he insisted. "That's my money. I made it selling weed." The FBI wasn't buying his story. While $50,000 was a significant sum, it was nowhere near the $1.088 million stolen from the bank. They needed to find the rest. Las Vegas, December 1998. Armed robbers had stolen over $1 million, shot a security guard, and vanished. Now, an informant had led the FBI to a trailer containing a suspicious amount of cash, but the bulk of the stolen money was still missing. Determined to break Riley, the FBI brought in Special Agent Brad Shields, an expert in interrogation. His job was simple: get Riley to talk. "I took him out of his comfort zone," Shields later explained. "When a suspect is in familiar surroundings, they feel in control. I needed him to realize how much trouble he was in." Sitting across from Riley in an FBI car, Shields laid it all out. "You're in deep trouble, Riley," he said. "But maybe we can work something out. Maybe you weren't involved in the robbery, just the money afterward. Maybe we can help you." At first, Riley resisted, sticking to a story about making money through drug sales. But Shields pressed on. "If you weren't part of the robbery, then you must know who was," he said. "Come on, Riley, who did it?" After a long pause, Riley finally cracked. "My brother Robert and his friend Tim," he confessed. Robert Bates and Timothy Blackburn. The two men at the center of it all. The FBI now had names. "Where's Tim now?" Shields asked. "I don't know," Riley shrugged. But the agents weren't going to let up. They searched the trailer further and discovered casino chips and receipts from the Luxor Hotel, one of the most famous casinos on the Las Vegas Strip. "We sent a team to Luxor to check it out," an agent later recounted. The security office confirmed Robert Bates had been staying there. Not only that, he had been spending recklessly. He's been partying nonstop since the night of the robbery. The casino's head of security reported. That was all the FBI needed. Agents rushed to Robert's hotel room, knocking loudly. "FBI, open up." Inside, Robert was completely unaware of the storm closing around him, high on drugs and surrounded by cash. He barely registered what was happening before agents stormed in and tackled him to the ground. Hands cupped behind his back, Robert was taken into custody. A search of his room revealed a pistol, drugs, and $5,000 in cash. But the majority of the stolen money was still missing. Robert was caught, but Tim Blackburn was still out there. And if history had proven anything, it was that Blackburn was far more dangerous than his partner in crime. The hunt was far from over. With Robert Bates in custody, The FBI turned its attention to the more elusive and dangerous suspect, Timothy Blackburn. If Robert had been reckless, flaunting his stolen money in Las Vegas casinos, Blackburn was the opposite, calculated, disciplined, and difficult to track. The agents combed through Robert's possessions, searching for any clue about Blackburn's whereabouts. Among the receipts and casino chips, they found something interesting, a parking ticket from a neighborhood just outside the city that gave them a possible location to investigate by morning. Law enforcement had located a house registered to a relative of Blackburn, setting up surveillance. They watched for any movement. Hours passed, and the only activity was a woman, Blackburn's sister-in-law, moving in and out of the house. Then, suddenly, something caught their attention. A vehicle, a dark-colored SUV, appeared at the end of the street and started making its way toward the house. "That's him," an agent whispered into the radio. But before the team could react, the SUV accelerated. He was making a run for it. Tires screeched as Blackburn lost control, the vehicle swerving wildly before coming to a sudden stop. Before the agents could close in, the driver's door swung open and Blackburn bolted. "Go! Go!" an officer shouted. Officers and FBI agents took off after him, cutting through yards, vaulting fences, chasing their suspect through the suburban streets. A police dog, trained for exactly this kind of scenario, picked up the scent and locked onto him. 2 blocks away, Blackburn made a desperate attempt to hide, crawling under the wooden porch of a house. He barely had time to catch his breath before the dog found him. "Come out with your hands up," an officer warned, "or we send the dog in." Silence. Then, slowly, Blackburn emerged. Mask still on, he raised his hands in surrender. As he was cuffed and taken into custody, one detail stood out. His holster was empty. "Where's the gun?" an agent asked. Blackburn said nothing. A quick search of the area provided the answer. While jumping over fences, he had dropped his weapon. He was lucky. If he'd had it during the chase, things might have ended differently. At the police station, Blackburn sat across from the agents, his face unreadable. "We know you planned this for months," an agent said. "We know you and Robert had help. We just need to know where the money is." Blackburn smirked, but remained silent. While investigators worked on breaking him, a separate team searched his house. Inside, they found cable ties matching the ones used on the cleaning crew during the robbery. They also recovered walkie-talkies, likely used to communicate during the heist. But the biggest discovery was outside. A detective called over the radio. "You're going to want to see this." In Blackburn's backyard, inside an old doghouse, they found several duffel bags stuffed with cash. At first, agents couldn't believe it. "He really hid it in a doghouse?" one of them muttered. It took hours to count the money, but the total came up to $900,000, nearly the entire amount stolen from the bank. By 4 p.m., the FBI confirmed it was a missing cache. With the evidence stacked against him, Blackburn faced multiple charges, including armed bank robbery, kidnapping, and weapons violations. But the case wasn't over yet. Authorities were convinced that someone else had been involved, someone who had worked just as hard to cover their tracks. And that person was standing right beside Blackburn the entire time, his wife, Sophia. With Timothy Blackburn and Robert Bates behind bars, the FBI turned its focus to the last missing piece of the puzzle, Sophia Blackburn. From the beginning, investigators had suspected that Blackburn's wife knew more than she was letting on. During questioning, Sophia denied any involvement in the heist. She claimed she had no idea where the stolen money had come from and insisted that she had spent the night of the robbery at home with her husband. "We were together all night," she said. "I don't know anything about a bank robbery." But the FBI wasn't convinced. The evidence told a different story. They had found cash hidden on her property. They had discovered communication devices used in the heist. And most importantly, they had her recorded phone calls with her husband, calls that suggested she had been helping him cover his tracks. Despite the mounting evidence, Sophia stuck to her story. "I have 2 daughters to take care of," she said. "I just want my life back." She was emotional, but the agents could tell she was holding something back. She was cooperative, an investigator later recalled. But her story didn't add up. She was either protecting Tim or she was directly involved. Maybe both. With no direct proof of her participation in the robbery, the authorities had no choice but to let her go, for now. 7 months later, on August 11th, 1999, Sophia Blackburn walked into the North Las Vegas Detention Center to visit her husband. The meeting seemed routine, just another conversation between a prisoner and his wife. But this time, something was different. Sophia's keychain had a small, almost unnoticeable tool attached to it. As she sat across from her husband, she discreetly used it to unscrew the bolts on the partition window, separating them. "How are the girls?" Tim asked, keeping the conversation casual. "They're good," Sophia responded, keeping her voice steady as she worked. A guard, standing at a distance, didn't notice what was happening. Then, at the perfect moment, Sophia stood up and walked toward the door, distracting the officers just long enough. That was all Blackburn needed. With the window loosened, he kicked it out, climbed through, and ran toward the security checkpoint. One door locked. The next opened. He jumped over a desk. Shoving the guard aside, Sophia, now outside, reached into her jacket, pulled out a hidden pistol, and threw it to him. The prison alarms blared. "Stop! Get on the ground!" officers shouted. But Blackburn wasn't stopping. He aimed his gun and fired. Gunfire erupted as the prison guards retaliated. Sophia had parked a getaway vehicle nearby, but as bullets flew, Blackburn abandoned the plan. He turned and sprinted toward the parking lot, looking for another way out. Seconds later, Sophia pulled up in an Isuzu Rodeo. She flung the door open. "Get in." Blackburn dove into the passenger seat. Tires screeched as the SUV sped away, disappearing into the Las Vegas streets. "We couldn't believe it," an FBI agent later said. "Breaking out of federal prison? That's nearly impossible. And yet he did it." By the time the authorities gathered themselves, Blackburn and Sophia were long gone. It was official. The most dangerous bank robber in Las Vegas history was back on the loose. The escape of Timothy Blackburn sent shockwaves through law enforcement. A man already considered dangerous was now on the run, and worse, he wasn't alone. He had Sophia with him, and somewhere out there, their 2 young daughters were waiting. For the FBI, this wasn't just about recapturing a fugitive. It was about preventing further violence. Blackburn was unpredictable, Special Agent Henry Schlamp later said. And now that he was free, we knew he wouldn't go down without a fight. The search began immediately. Agents visited every known associate of the Blackburns. They staked out homes, tracked phone calls, and even put airports on high alert. The biggest fear was that Blackburn would flee the country, disappearing before they could close in on him. But that didn't happen. Instead, something strange occurred. One of Blackburn's family members had reported their car stolen, a Nissan Pathfinder. A week later, a police helicopter patrolling the outskirts of Las Vegas spotted a vehicle matching its description. The SUV was parked in the desert, and beside it, a family of 4. FBI agents and Las Vegas police move in, cautiously approaching the scene. "It was tense," an officer later recalled. "We didn't know if it was really them, and if it was, we didn't know if he was armed." Agents set up their positions, rifles ready. As they got closer, they saw the family more clearly. A man, a woman, and 2 small children. But something was off. Schlamp pulled out his binoculars, focusing on the scene. Then he cursed under his breath. "It's not him." They had the wrong people. The couple was a completely different family, just stopping for a break in the desert. Another dead end. And the worst part? The operation had exhausted a massive amount of resources they couldn't afford to waste. "We realized we couldn't do this every time we got a tip," Schlamp admitted. "We had to be smarter." That night, the FBI shifted tactics. Instead of chasing ghosts, they would put pressure on Blackburn's inner circle. The first target? His brother. Agents stormed his home, arresting him for aiding and abetting a fugitive. Next, Sophia's sister. She had previously claimed her car was in the shop, but now, investigators knew the truth. Blackburn had used it as his getaway vehicle. With 2 of his closest relatives behind bars, the FBI made sure the news got back to Blackburn. "We needed him to feel trapped," Schlamp explained. We needed him to think he had nowhere left to turn. And then something happened. A tip came in. Blackburn had contacted an old friend, someone he trusted, and this friend had called the FBI. He's angry, the friend said. He knows you arrested his brother. He doesn't know what to do next. Blackburn had always been careful, always calculated. But now, for the first time, he was making mistakes. The FBI was closing in. It was only a matter of time. 2.5 weeks after Timothy Blackburn's prison break, the FBI received the most promising lead yet. He was back in Las Vegas. A confidential informant had tipped off a Las Vegas SWAT officer, claiming Blackburn was hiding in a long-term motel. At first, Agent Henry Schlampf was skeptical. "I didn't think he'd be dumb enough to come back," he later admitted. To test the informant's credibility, Schlampf asked a simple question. "Do you know the names of Blackburn's daughters?" The informant didn't hesitate. He got them both right. That was all the proof they needed. Schlampf and a SWAT team raced the motel. When they arrived, they spoke to the manager. "Do you recognize these people?" Schlampf asked, showing a photo of the Blackburns. The manager frowned, shaking his head. "No, doesn't look familiar," he said, "and they're not on the guest list." Another dead end? Schlampf wasn't convinced. He rented a room in the motel, using it as a base to observe the parking lot. Every car was checked against Blackburn's known associates. Nothing stood out. Frustrated, the agents decided to change their approach. A security guard working at the motel would go door to door, pretending to check on a noise complaint. It was a simple trick, one that worked almost immediately. When the guard knocked on one particular door, it opened just a crack. A woman peeked out. Schlampf's heart started racing. It was Sophia Blackburn. She spoke briefly to the guard, then shut the door. Schlampf radioed his team. "We got her." But where was Tim? Now they had to be careful. The motel was evacuated, leaving only the Blackburns inside. A SWAT officer called their room. "Timothy Blackburn, we know you're in there. You're surrounded. Come out peacefully." Silence. The FBI agents prepared for a standoff, but then something unexpected happened. Blackburn didn't want to talk to the negotiators. He wanted to talk to one man, Henry Schlampf. Schlampf picked up the phone. "Hello, Tim." For the first few minutes, Blackburn was calm. He talked about his children, about how much he had missed them. Then his voice changed. "You're not taking me back to prison," he said. Schlampf knew what that meant. "Tim, let's talk about this." But Blackburn wasn't listening. "I'm not going back," he repeated. Sophia could be heard in the background, whispering something. Then Blackburn asked a chilling question. "If I were to shoot myself, where's the best place? The temple?" Schlampf's stomach dropped. He tried to keep Blackburn talking, buying time. "Tim, we don't have to end it like this. Let's get your kids to safety." "Let's." Then he heard it. Laughter. Not from Blackburn. From his children. They were inside the room. Schlampf turned to his team. "There are kids in there." That changed everything. The FBI prepared for a forced entry. Explosives were placed at the door, ready to breach if necessary. Then, another gunshot. The team rushed in. Inside, the scene was horrifying. Sophia was dead. The 2 young girls had been shot. They were still alive, but just barely. And Blackburn? He had turned the gun on himself. The agents grabbed the girls, rushing them to paramedics. Despite their best efforts, the children didn't survive. The FBI had spent months chasing Timothy Blackburn, trying to bring him to justice. In the end, he chose his own way out. Aftermath. In federal court, Riley Bates and Jennifer pleaded guilty to possession of stolen money. Because they cooperated with authorities, they received relatively light sentences, 1 year in prison. Robert Bates, the other mastermind behind the robbery, received 24 years. Blackburn's sister was also convicted, serving time for lying to the FBI. But for Agent Schlampf and the rest of law enforcement, this case was never just about arrests. It was about lives lost, 2 innocent children, a mother who made the wrong choices, a desperate man who refused to surrender. Schlampf later reflected on the tragedy. Blackburn knew exactly what he was doing. He didn't come back to Las Vegas to escape. He came back to die. The case of Timothy Blackburn became infamous, a grim reminder that some crimes don't end with an arrest. Sometimes they end in tragedy.